welcome if you are just not tuning in. I am Danielle Washburn, a digital high school and state agency digital innovation leader. And our next show is about the JCPS Academic Reentry Plan Module 1 with the incredible Jenny Aberly and Susan Price.
Okay. Danielle, I'll get started.
Okay, sounds good.
Jenny's going to share her screen. And so today we wanted to talk a little bit about the guidance that we have received from the Kentucky Department of Education on reentry, because we know our number one goal when students reenter in the fall is for them to be successful. And we're excited about that. So we also know that, we've had some opportunities to really look at students, that maybe learning losses that they've had, and then thinking about how are we really going to adjust to ensure that students are successful when they, come back in the fall. So today we're really just going to lead you through Module 1, which really just shares the process that KD has provided to support planning for successful reentry. We're also going to outline the district support that will be provided to coaches and to schools in planning for that, because we know that this takes into account a significant portion of spring that was spent in NTI. And so, again, this is guidance and support. So that's how we want everyone to view this. Entry plan this is guidance and support for reentry. So, and we also know that we can plan and have all these wonderful plans, and when our students enter, it's still going to be a time that we will also need to readjust based on student needs. And we know the reality is we spend the first few weeks of school getting to know our students. And so it's also going to be important in that to really look at each individual learner and what they need, and to look at the curriculum that we have planned, because what we realize is we'll have to have some scaffolding up, some scaffolding down, because we never want anyone to think about, as students enter and coming back into fall, thinking that everyone is going to need Tier 2 supports. So we want to continue with growth mindsets and moving forward so that every student coming in back to school can be successful. Jenny?
Okay. So the overview of the PD plan, we have 3 modules for teachers. Our first module is where we are in right now, and this is just to provide you with the basic overview and how we're going to respond. So in the second module, we are going to present that for the first time tomorrow to our academic instructional coaches. And that module is about planning for reentry. What are the specific steps and processes that teachers need to go through? So after we offer that tomorrow to the coaches, we will be offering additional sessions over the next couple of weeks for teachers to sign up for and be a part of that. And then module 3 will come later in the summer, and that'll be about responding to reentry by minimizing those learning gaps. So if you stretch this timeline out, you can see where we are today with the learning channel. Module 2 will happen before or right after school finishes. Then will be the work of the PLCs to figure out that plan for Module 2. And then throughout the year, we'll be working and supporting teachers and PLCs with that. We had a question come up about a timeline yesterday, and there was a misunderstanding that it was expected that Module 2 would be completed before the end of this school year. And that is not possible. However, teachers should have access and know what's in Module 2 so that they can make a plan for doing that work, either right here at the end of the school year. Some of it might happen over the summer, certainly right before school starts. So the timeline of Module 2 would be trying to complete that process before you see, however C looks, students in the fall. And then Module 3 will happen soon after.
So when we thought about who would be leading this work in the school, we, wanted schools to have the autonomy and options. So we didn't want to just categorize a particular group. So schools will have the option for who will be leading this work. Again, like Jenny said, tomorrow we will begin this process with the AICs, but there may be additional support staff, your APs, your instructional leadership team, department chairs, and teacher leaders in your building. Who knows best but your teachers on the learning opportunities students have and the learning opportunities students still need. And again, there really isn't a timeline per se. This is work that, you will be engaging in your schools. And so you will work on those individual timelines. JCPS has not set a timeline when this work, needs to be completed, because again, this is guidance on the reentry. So again, this is just the guidance statement. Due to extended remote learning during the spring, we know that potential inequities may lead to gaps in student understanding of grade level standards. So that's why KDE has provided the guidance around how, when students enter back into the fall, can we ensure that they will have the skills and the standards that they are going to need to be successful in the 2021 school year.
So again, we want to start thinking about how we set students up to transition back in a way that's going to support their academic success. And we see this work coming in 2 stages or 2 modules, Module 2 and Module 3. Oops. So in Module 2, which is the one we're going to start rolling out tomorrow, that's where teachers and teams and PLCs will really assess those learning gaps that exist from this year. Because we know due to NTI, there are standards, concepts, content, and skills that simply did not get taught or did not get taught to the depth that it needed to. So those are going to create gaps for students next year. And then Module 3 will be about using formative assessments to inform those instructional decisions. So within Module 2, or within Module 2, there are 3 action statements. And the work of these 3 action statements should really occur before the start of the 2021 school year. So in action item 1, that's when teachers really work on a table that indicates what they taught before NTI, what they taught during NTI, and then what didn't get taught during NTI. And I use the word taught there, but we know that it's not just about the teaching and covering things. It's about what students learned. So know that it's not just about, I covered it, I did it, it was on a lesson plan. It's about, did students really get it? So this is the stage where we can really identify some potential time savers and gaps from that curriculum at the teacher level. Then in action item 2, teachers bring those completed tables to their PLCs or their department, not to their departments, but their PLCs or grade level or content specific teams. And they start to have conversations about what each person filled in on that table. So they can begin to identify where those big gaps might be and start to have conversations about what does the grade level or course above me need to do next year to fill in those gaps of learning? And then action 3 is sharing that document, which we're calling table 2, sharing that document with the grade level or course up, so they can see, here are the gaps. This is what I need to make sure I fill in because kids didn't get that last year. In addition to, what is it that I need to do this year? What are the essentials? Because we know that students are going to come to us with gaps. We can't just immediately start putting students into tier 2 interventions because they don't know it. The truth is, they probably don't know it because they never had access to it, or had very little or limited or surface level access to it. So then when we're thinking about what they need, those gaps that we need to fill in addition to the current standards, we're going to have to be real strategic in making time in our curriculum and instructional plans so that we can meet those various needs. So if there are things that we spend a lot of time on because we just love it, but it's not something that's really going to help students with filling in those learning gaps, we might need to rethink whether we need to spend so much time on that or even cover it at all. So next year is probably going to look really different in terms of the types of things you teach.
Jimmy, I'd like to just go back to Module 3 because I also think that it's important when we're working on drafting that adjusted curriculum that we are really thinking about, ways that we can bundle standards, ways that we can plan with an interdisciplinary lens so that, we can bundle standards and we can, teach, multiple standards within, for example, a PBL. We also know that when you talked about scaffolding, that it's going to be really important because, within 25 children, we may have 25 different levels. So this is a perfect time to, personalize learning for students. Students have projects. And we also know that, we produce choice boards at the district level. So students who participated and used those choice boards, they have had access to standards because while we really tried to have the activities on the choice boards to be more project-based, more extended time learning, more self-paced learning, that they were still standards-based. And if students have used choice boards, then they're really used to that type of learning. So when you think about drafting your adjusted curriculum, my hope is that everyone will come to that through the lens of the learner and ensuring that in that drafted curriculum that, we're thinking about our JCPS success skills. We're also thinking about our backpack, what backpack evidence can come out of this. And we also know that we have standards that scaffold across the year. So, or spiral across the year. So, they don't all have to be taught in the first 6 weeks. So those are just some things that, I think about when I think if I'm leading a team around how we are drafting an adjusted curriculum, just some different and creative ways that we might, look at that rather than, just looking at just what standards have been taught and how we're, going to cover those. But in what ways are we going to ensure students are receiving those standards and receiving that instruction in a way that's learner-centered and meaningful to them?
Right. And something that I think about too, Susan, when you say that is I've heard several people mention, creating a unit at the beginning to cover what was missed. But with a lot of the standards and skills, like that is something that can be spiraled in with what teachers are already doing so that it doesn't become this odd, standalone, disconnected work at the beginning of the year. But you're right, it becomes something that makes sense and is meaningful for students. So how are we going to support this? We have some training dates coming up. These are dates that any teacher can join, and there are Zoom links there. You can see these are for elementary teachers, Zone 1 and 2 and 3 with AIS. There are dates there for the middle schools. There's 2 dates for math, for science, for ELA, and for social studies. And then finally, we have specific high school training dates, again, by the 4 different content areas. in this slide deck is linked in the agenda or the content that's part of this, so you can get those there. So once you have done an amazing job with Module 2 in adjusting your curriculum for next year, you'll get Module 3, and this is where you will be looking at different types of pre-assessments and formative assessments to help inform those instructional decisions. And those assessments can look lots of different ways. And it's not just math, and it's not just something multiple choice, but there are some performance-based assessments you can use. Lots of different types there. So when we say assessments, don't just lock in on one specific type, because there are multiple types that you can use in helping to inform your instruction for next year. And then during the year next year, we're going to continue to support professional learning and implementation of this ReEntry plan. We're going to support AICs, PLCs. We'll have content-specific professional learning and support teachers around the district however we can. A few things to consider in implementing these modules is who's going to participate in the modules. Is it going to be, a school needs to identify who's going to help lead that work. Is it going to be academic coaches? Is it going to be assistant principals? Who's going to organize and facilitate that for the school? And who should be involved in planning of this academic re-entry? And then what about time? Identifying a timeline will be really important for this. We know it's down to the wire toward the end of this particular school year, but getting a plan in place for doing this work before students come back to school next year will be really important. So identifying what that time looks like and a timeline for teachers to do this grade level analysis work, this vertical analysis work, and not just passing tables along, but really building in time for those meaningful conversations, because that's where the magic happens. Susan, what did we miss?
I think that's it. I just want to assure everyone that our whole CDLI team, teaching and learning, will all be a part of supporting this work as students re-enter. We will all be working with our colleagues across departments to ensure that we're all working together for that successful re-entry. So Danielle, are there any questions on the chat that we may need to address?
There is one question from Beth White, and she asks, will the district provide those pre-assessment, or will they be created by PLCs?
Those will be created by PLCs. We don't have any, common formative assessments. And I think those will really be based on individual teachers in classrooms and and PLCs, but those will be school level assessments.
Thank you. And then if you are tuning in and if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, or I'm sure that you can email someone from the CDLI team and they will be able to assist you as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for the update. All right. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.